Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you here, a pile of mail. I haven't touched mail in a bit of time. I've got a bunch of periodicals. For instance, there's the New Yorker with this beautiful cover. Look at that. That is just amazing. That is Pulling Ahead by Sergio Garcia Sanchez. And I wish that I could say that the rest of the magazine really thrilled me. There's a lot of books coverage in here, but it's inconsequential books. So, I mean, this is the risk you run with a books coverage like The New Yorker, where it's very much about the writer and their passion. It's really not, as far as I know, it's really not a book section editor saying, here are the books that I want reviewed in a given month. I doubt they have a dedicated book section editor. Probably just star reviewers. So here it's much more a question of the match of the reviewer and the book. I got this thing and I found it fascinating. And because it's the New Yorker, I will write about it at 3,000 words of length, when none of the books in this issue really seem to carry that for me. Then we have the TLS, the London Times Literary Supplement. This had a great deal of good stuff in it. There's a long article right at the beginning about Claire Carlisle's new book on George Eliot. I've not been a big fan of hers, but that sounds really good, and I don't have it yet. I haven't seen it yet. But there were other things as well. Yes, there was an article here by Cordelia Fine about reviewing a new book about the Tavistock Clinic in the UK and the controversy surrounding it and its closing. At one point, a fairly hardline ideological view in the review that I wasn't expecting. I would think that this would be the kind of thing that you couldn't write in a review, that you couldn't even imply in a review without the TLS's offices in London being firebombed. But at one point, the review says, how did an initially tiny, cautious, and reflective gender service end up negligently medicalizing an unknown number of vulnerable young people? And I'm sure that Tavistock's remaining defenders would say they didn't do that, so that question is leading. But I find it interesting that it could be asked at all in a piece. There was also a wonderful article in here. I won't page through all of this, I promise. There was a wonderful article in here on... where was the next one? It was very, very good. Okay, well, there's another book about how to pay attention, and that got a really good review. Also, The Shadow of God, Kant, Hegel, and the Passage from Heaven to History, which is a book that we actually saw on this channel last year. That also gets a long review. But there was something else. Where was it? Oh, yes. Here it is. There's a review by Helen Bynum of that book that we just saw, Planta Sapiens, which is all about maybe the ways that plants feel and think. And one of the bullet points for that book that we saw when we were talking about it was that plants are susceptible to anesthesia. And the reviewer here says that the author of the book, Calvo, therefore concludes that to be alive is to be susceptible to anesthesia. But I don't think anyone was doubting that these things were alive. It's just I'm still thinking about that book. I read it right away. I'm going to read it again when I get the finished copy, but very disturbing implications. It may be that I have been some sort of culinary trailblazer by living almost exclusively on Mega Stuff Oreos. Then we got the New York Review of Books. A really hideous cover. A bird tracking over a human being. What did we have in this one that was of interest? Mostly not. But James Fenton has an opening piece, a long piece on gardening that I will cut out and tuck it in with to a couple of books I have about gardening. I'll just find which one has the more room. Francis Wilson does a fantastic piece on the new, is it Schocken? Yes, Schocken Books has a big new selection of Kafka's diaries. And it got just the kind of review that I want here. Francis Wilson writes... there's a really good point involved. Writing involved a fight that Kafka rarely won. And she opens up the piece by talking about how intricately connected bedtime is for Kafka with fiction, and how intimately connected it is in his fiction. Pretty interesting stuff. Again, I will not put it in a file as I used to do for years and years. Instead, I will clip it up. I will date it and I will put it in one of Reiner Stock's biographies, the 3-volume biography of Kafka. Christine Smallwood reviews The Shards by Bret Easton Ellis, and doesn't review it particularly charitably. I didn't have much to think about the book. It seemed to me to be extremely empty, if that isn't a contradiction in terms. So I read the review and thought nothing much of it. I thought there was one other thing in here that I wanted to mention that seemed of interest. Let's see here. Oh yes, Gary Saul Morrison, who's a name I don't know, writes a long piece about Chekhov. Not the Enterprise's navigator, but the author, Chekhov, that I really like. I want to have... oh, here we go. This is what I was thinking of. Nick Laird reviews those 2 enormous books of Auden's poetry. Those 2 600-page each volumes that we saw from, was it Princeton? Yes, Princeton. And this review is the first time that I have learned that there is another volume coming out in that Princeton set. The final volume, which is called Personal Writings, Selected Letters, Journals, and Poems Written for Friends. That is out. That is coming out. I didn't know that. That's great. I thought there was one other thing in here, though. A book I saw that I maybe wanted. That does sometimes happen with these things. I would just circle the thing and longingly. But I don't see it now, so maybe it wasn't in this. But that was a New York Review of Books. Then we got the Vineyard Gazette, broadsheet newspaper. In Martha's Vineyard off the coast of Massachusetts. There are some horsies. We got a new issue of Men's Health with Rob Lowe, and that is his son on the cover. And the 2 of them are worshipfully interviewed. And we're told that Rob doesn't eat... They start off the interview at a fried seafood shack, where they're both, father and son, are gorging on fried food and batter and butter and fries and dipping ketchup and whatnot. And the writer of the interview goes, Rob doesn't eat this way often. He has been a spokesman for the Atkins diet for 5 years, and fried batter is not part of the Atkins diet. John Owen, that's his son, doesn't eat this way either. He's 5 years sober and tends to treat his body and mind like someone who feels lucky to still have both. And that totally ignores the fact that not only do they both smoke a lot, but that Rob Lowe is proud of the fact that he addicted his son to tobacco. So you know, it bothers me. That kind of thing always bothers me, especially when, I mean, I know what your job is. You know, if you're doing this kind of review, it's your job to to write this kind of thing and not to really look that hard at it, not really think that much of it. I know that that's your job, but I don't know. I guess it's cavalier of me to say don't take the job or mention it in the piece. I'm sure that the editors at Men's Health would not have wanted such a mention to be there at all. But there is another article in here that will impact, to use impact as a verb, some of you out there, some of you poor long-suffering souls out there. This is an article by Austin Williams, and it's called "The World Is the World Too Damn Busy for You?" And it is about how you should cope if you are being constantly ignored. See, there's the graphic. Checking in, are you free? Did you get that sort of thing? With no response at all. And the author of the article gives a few suggestions. He explains why silence hurts so much. He mentions that at work you should change your expectations, and that will help you to not feel ignored, and that in your personal life you should distract yourself so that you're not concentrating so much on the fact that you're being ignored. I naturally read that with a smile on my face because my own response is to send a message in all caps that a number of you have got that message. It only says one thing. It's a fairly grotesque and disturbing thing. It tends to work. It's the one thing that you should dread in your Voxer inbox or your inbox, your email inbox or your iMessage inbox. It's the one message that means you are neglecting me, and that you must rectify that right away. Then there was the London. I try, in my own defense, I try to remember that I'm on the fainting couch all day long, except when I'm walking the bean. There's Bean on her perch. we will certainly be going on long walks today since it's summertime weather outside. But I try to remember that that's not true for everybody, and that a 2-day wait for a message is not unheard of at all. It's only when it gets more egregious than that that I lose patience, and when I do, I lose it quick. If I email someone at an email that's public, so it's on their blog or it's on their website or whatever, and I am asking them not, to shoot the breeze, but an actual pointed question, something maybe writing or business related, and then I bring it to their attention because maybe they don't check that email, and they say, oh, I will check that email, and then ignore it. So I know they've seen that message, and I don't get back even got the message, no time to respond, or I got the message, I'm not interested, just silence. That's when Steve goes from joking about being neglected to feeling steamed about being neglected. Because no matter what you might think, and no matter what you have heard from unbelievably lazy people in the professional world who will tell you silence, no reply is the new not interested, that is not true. That is absolutely not true. No response is rude. It is just rude. And not to be all foreboding or anything, but it also burns a bridge, with me anyway, and I imagine with other people who feel the same way, it burns a bridge. So if you get an offer or a technical question or a business-related question, and you simply ignore it, because you, I don't know, just don't feel like answering it, you don't want to send even a pro forma response of not interested. Well, if you change your mind in 6 months or a year, don't expect me to change my mind. Anyway, most of the time I try to compose myself well and tell people I'm asking all of you to be patient if you email me, because sometimes it takes me a while to get through all of my emails. And so I expect that I should offer the same patience to other people. Then we also have the London Review of Books, another great literary journal. This one has a book is reviewed in here that I want, and I don't have it, and I don't know if it's going to come out in this country. It's called Doggy People, The Victorians Who Made the Modern Dog. It's by Michael Warboys, Worboys. I don't know that that's ever going to come out in this country, and I really, really want it. But there's also, in the latest page here, there's lots of responses to all sorts of things, but there's also something pretentious and missing the point and pointlessly fight picking that I thought I would bring up here. I thought I would read it to you. Jonathan Rhee writes that Ludwig von Mises, who is not mentioned on BookTube anymore now that David Murphy doesn't have a channel, Ludwig von Mises expected the Bolshevik government to fizzle out, imagining it would, quote, fade away like the brief and farcical episode of Anabaptist rule in 16th century Munster, close quote. And the letter writer goes on. But that rebellion remains ever present in the city. 3 cages in which the corpses of the Anabaptist leader were displayed after they had been publicly tortured and executed still hang from the tower of St. Lambert's Church, as the novel Q by the Italian collective Luther Blissett has it. Now, before we get to the quote, Q by Luther Blissett, who is he's called an Italian collective because it's many authors who are writing it. Q is wonderful. If you see it at a used bookstore or a charity shop, it's a historical novel you will really like if you're interested at all in European wars of religion. But the quote is, no one looks at them. The past hangs right over their heads, and if they try to lift their heads too far, the cages are there as a reminder. The cages are not there as a reminder of 3 Anabaptist insurrection. The cages aren't there as a reminder of anything. And the brief Anabaptist rule in Munster did fade. It did fizzle out. So I don't know what point the letter writer is trying to make. But the last of the periodicals that we got is Architectural Digest, which I haven't looked at in a long time. This particular issue, as you can see here, is Creative License. Top tastemakers at home. So we get to see how these people actually arrange their own homes. And we have, as usual, with National Geographic, there's a large number of very expensive ads at the front. I mean, there's a Dior watch. Can you imagine how much that costs? Probably $100,000 for a wristwatch. Probably. That's what you get at the front of the magazine is ads like that. There's one here that mentions that their private studio is open by appointment only. Uh, we get a few profiles. Here is a designer named Xavier Donnelly, uh, who's a New York designer and interior designer, who is perfectly free to renovate my interiors any day. Well, we also have ads for interior design and also furniture if you happen to be visiting from Alpha Centauri. This outfit is not for humans. I think they pretty much say it. It's called Visual Comfort and Co. And I don't see the fine print, but I'm pretty sure that they have a no humans client policy. You go through all these ads at the front of this thing, all kinds of things like that. But eventually, you get to the back of the magazine where the actual articles are. And in this case, I was curious to see how designers live when they're at home, how they set up their own homes. Are their own homes every bit as insufferable and unlivable as the ones that we see that are their handiwork elsewhere? And it turns out the answer is mostly yes, but not entirely yes. Like, for instance, here we have a home in the Hamptons that is unbelievably hideous. Look at that. That is a chair, believe it or not. These things are the consistency of a bedsheet, so they aren't softening anything at all. So instead you have this, which is just iron frameworks latched into place. Absolutely hideous, and also unsittable. You can't sit in this chair. But also notice the larger failures. There's only one way to arrange this room correctly, and that is to put this couch against this wall. Right now, the couch is in the middle of the room, which means you do not see this, and you do not see this, unless you turn your head, unless you crane your head 90 degrees to one side or another, or sit backwards on the couch, you will be missing the views in two directions. Now, there might be a view right here, where the camera is, but that's still 1 out of 3. The couch should be here, which means this hideous thing should be off the wall. What is this anyway? It's not good for anything, so get rid of it. Maybe put a painting up there or a mirror, something like that, but make sure that it's lightweight because it's going to be right over the couch. I try to avoid that myself because you know that the worst will happen. Here are the pretentious designers and their pretentious son on a patio, and there is a rather nice natural environment that the house has in the back, but not used, and probably there are no useful paths there either, which means it's just a waste. Here we have, what is this? A dining room nook? How inviting that is. Just tuck your knees underneath. Oh, wait. You can't tuck your knees anywhere here. Not on this side, not on the other side, and definitely not here. But that's where the stools are. Well, I guess you can sort of lean all the way forward to put your elbows out, but you're not supposed to put your elbows in that. In fact, probably the people on the invite list for this hideous house don't even have elbows anymore. Probably went to a clinic in San Fernando Valley and got rid of them. And we've also got this lovely piece of art just sitting there. That's great. Real conversation starter. So this one's a complete wash. What if we move on to the next one? Now, the next one is the part where I said not completely, because the Deep South has come through. Alabama has come through. We have a house here in Alabama. Every bad decision that this interior designer could have made, she's made. But it doesn't matter. The bones of the place are so good that her bad decisions could be fixed in no time at all. Here is the living room. One living room anyway, a living room gallery of a kind. Fireplace that's not blocked. I mean, yes, the wallpaper is hideous, but that would be no trouble at all to get rid of. And some of the rest of this arrangement is a little bit fussy. These curtains and drapes everywhere are a little bit fussy. I'd get rid of them as well, and probably get rid of the hideous rug and the hideous upholstery. But the bones of this area are wonderful. And occasionally in this profile, it almost seems like the designer is aware of that. Like she's aware of how nice these bones are and is trying at least a little not to destroy them. Plus, as you can see, this one person there is at least is happy. Let's see if I can get you the exterior. Yeah, there's an exterior of the rear of the house. Very nice. Lots that could be done there. See, that is a kitchen. You look at that kitchen, you think, I could use that. which most of the kitchens that we see in Architectural Digest, absolutely you do not say that about them. Now, you saw that the designer has children. So you might be thinking, well, then that means our old nemesis, the giant stuffed giraffe. And here we have the children's room. Yes, there's a beanbag shaped like a puppy, and there's dumb wallpaper. But no. But that's because the photographer had to be somewhere. The photographer was in the doorway of the room, and in the mirror, in the mirror, you can see that right by the photographer is our old friend, the giant stuffed giraffe, that no child actually has or actually wants. That is only an adult saying, well, all kids like that. I know that from movies. So I'm going to fill this room with a bunch of stuff that kids like. But they don't like them. The kids aren't allowed to touch any of this stuff. They probably aren't allowed in the room that's called the kids' room. And see, things like this has potential. This is the master bedroom. You definitely don't want plants in the corner there. Even if you do have, I'm sure that this person has illegal immigrant domestic help that she screams at in order to clean every nook and cranny of this designer house. Even so, you don't want to plant in a corner like that because it's not going to be alone for long, and you're going to know that. But that at least had potential, and so does this next one. This next one is a Brooklyn townhouse. All Brooklyn townhouses have potential. This one, the designer in question really works hard to destroy that potential. Really, that is not a place where humans can sit and enjoy themselves, and yet you can see that the structure of the thing, you'd want to get rid of literally everything here. All of the wall coverings, all of, I guess this is furniture. You'd want to get rid of all of that. You want to get rid of whatever this is. I think it's a ceiling light. You'd want to get rid of all of that. Just basically strip it all to the joist. But you could, I mean, you've got these nice curved doorways. You could do a lot with the space. It's just the last person on earth that you want to give this to is a professional interior designer. That's just the last place in the world. Here's the living room. Notice where the light is coming from. The couch has its back to the source of the lighting, which has a nice curved, again, a curved space there. I don't know what this is. You do want to get rid of everything here, basically. Get rid of whatever this, I guess this is furniture. But you want to get rid of it. You want to get rid of all of this and get rid of whatever that thing is. And just get this down to the walls and the archways and the floors. And then build it up again. But it isn't a loss if you do that, which is great. Oh my, some of the other choices here are just bad. And then we move to Bruges. Is that right? Well, no. First we're in Montecito, California. But, oh God. No. Well, let's move on to Bruges. There is a place in Bruges here that is unbelievably bric-a-bracy. It's like Queen Victoria's going to walk in the door at any minute. But again, you could fix it. You definitely don't want that. This is rather nice, a rather nice piece, that ancient Egyptian falcon there. But you don't want it up on a mantelpiece like that. I guess that's a mantelpiece. Is that a fireplace? I don't really know. Could be, or maybe it's a door to Mordor. We have the outside. You can see that this has potential. These things are chairs. They have to go. And the table also has to go. A table has 4 legs. If it doesn't have 4 legs, it's not a table. But there are parts of this that can be salvaged. I mean, you can't salvage a couch like that. You have to just get rid of it. You have to just throw it away. You can't get a buyer for it, even on eBay at $1. And you don't want to salvage a headboard like that. You want to get rid of it. But you can see that there's a raw element here that if it were not in the hands of an interior designer, something could be done with it, I think. Same thing here, where I'm guessing that this bathtub is within sight of the master bedroom. It's in the same room, and you've got carpet. Oh, I've noticed in years of looking at Architectural Digest and House Beautiful and whatnot that the surest way that you are going to know that you're going to look at something and say, what were you thinking, is if the person involved does it for a living, which is really weird to me. But anyway, those are the periodicals. Then we have a couple of books that I opened. And then we'll open a few packages together, and we'll see what we get. The first one that I opened, I let out a Steve squeal, so I'm afraid you missed a Steve squeal. This is the Itati Library from Harvard University Press. It's sort of a companion to their Loeb Classical Library, which has the original Greek and Latin on one side of these little handy little hardcovers, and then an English language translation on the other. The Loeb Classical Library is dealing with very well-known quantities, right? There's volume after volume of Livy or Virgil or Horace or Catullus, and those poets have been translated innumerable times. The Loeb Classical Library series does have lesser known classical authors and fragments and whatnot, but their bread and butter is stuff that everybody knows. And the Itati library takes that a lot further, because in addition to having things like Machiavelli or the handful of other Renaissance writers that anyone could name, they also have new and sometimes groundbreaking translations of Renaissance era authors that are not known to the public, not even in school, which makes getting these volumes an absolute joy. And I got one in the mail just the other day. This is Paolo Giovio, and this is Portraits of Learned Men. This is translated by Kenneth Goins. See, and you'll get, Giovio wrote in Latin, so you get the Latin on one side and the English on the other. And this is a series, he did a series of biographies of learned men, starting with Albertus Magnus and Duns Scotus, going all the way forward to Erasmus, covering everybody. It's very much along the lines of short biographies, piquant biographies, very much along the lines of his mentor, Vasari, who did the same thing for artists. And Giovio did this for a museum. He was going to create a building where these biographies would be attached to the very best portraits that he could find of these learned men. And it would be open to the public on Lake Como. And you'd be able to just walk around in it. A very forward-looking idea. A very fascinating guy. Led a fascinating life. And these... I wonder if this dust jacket will tell me. This has had English language translations before, but barely any. This volume contains a fresh edition of the Latin text and a new, more complete translation than any now available in English. Fantastic. Absolutely incredible. And who is, I'm probably mispronouncing his name, Kenneth Goins is a professor of history at the University of Connecticut. I am a huge fan of the Itati series. I have reviewed more of them, I think, than anybody else in the mainstream. I mean, you'll get historical journals and whatnot who will review these things, but I think I'm the only one who reviews them otherwise, and I've reviewed a lot of them. I will definitely be reviewing this thing. Can't wait to dig into it. I'll let out a little squeal. I'm very happy to be on their mailing list. And then another Steve squeal, unfortunately, that we missed. This is a huge thing from Princeton University Press. This is The Deep Ocean, Life in the Abyss. Big oversized thing full of illustrations of all the weird creatures that live deep, deep in the depths. Look at how far down we go. Look at how far down. There's the surface. Oh my god. There are a couple of really good YouTube infographic videos about how deep the oceans go. Kyrgyzstan does one, but there are a couple of others too. I'll try to remember to find them and put them in the description down below, because they're worth your time to really realize how deep the oceans are. And the things that live down there, and what the adaptations that they have to do for life to be down there, including some life in very deep geothermal vents, some life that has no connection whatsoever to the sun, to Earth's sun. No connection whatsoever. It evolved from microbes and continues to evolve next to these vents, getting all its nutrients and all its livability from a source of light and heat and nutrients that is not connected with the solar cycle. Except, that the solar cycle is the basis for life on Earth, but not directly. No photosynthesis, no nothing like that. No byproducts of it. Books like this always please me, especially since if it's Princeton, it will be probably some of the latest research will be synthesized, which is always fun because I don't keep up with it. And then we have 3 packages. And we're going to, the bean looking over my shoulder there. We're going to go through these. We're going to exercise self-control. All we need is to exercise self-control. We'll get through them without any trouble at all. Oh, great. Okay. All right. This first one is a finished copy of something we've already seen. I think this is next month. I think this is an April release. Yes, this is mid-April. This is by Anthony McCartan, and it is Going Zero. 2 hours to vanish. 1 chance to escape. Block the beam. There we go. And this had that great tagline about Michael Crichton. I wonder if it'll be on here. No, there was there was a tagline about if Michael Crichton were alive today, he would have written this, that sort of thing. But let's see. Oh, no, here it is. If Michael Crichton were alive today, he may have written a book like the one about to be the biggest threats to humanity, Surveillance. This is a techno-thriller for the times we live in. The premise: 10 Americans have been carefully selected to beta test a groundbreaking piece of spyware. Pioneered by tech wunderkind Cy Baxter in collaboration with the CIA, Fusion can track anyone on Earth, but does it work? Each participant to the test is given 2 hours to, quote, go zero, to go off-grid and disappear, and then 30 days to elude the highly sophisticated capture teams sent to find them. Any zero that beats Fusion will receive $3 million. If Cy's system prevails, he wins a $90 billion government contract to revolutionize surveillance forever. But one of the contestants may have been underestimated. Inevitably, one of the contestants wants to stay hidden. Caitlin Day is an unassuming Boston librarian with some secrets up her sleeves. Her stakes are far higher than money and more personal than anyone imagines. Caitlin needs to win as badly as Cy needs to realize his own ambitions. They have no choice but to finish the game when the timer hits zero. There will only be one winner. I got the advanced copy of this, and it sounds great. I got an email just recently from the book's publicist asking, what'd you think, that sort of thing, and I haven't got to it yet. Of course, I haven't got to April yet. Most of what I'm reading is still March. But great. That was no trouble at all. That didn't bother our studio censors one little bit. So let's see what this next one is. It's a finished copy of something. Oh, okay. I think we've already seen this. That's good. If we've already seen it, that means it's already past the censors. This is a March book, I think. Hope not. April. This is early April. This is the finished copy of Joe Milan's The All-American. Keep the beam in the focus here. I want to make sure you can see her lovely face. The All-American it's this author's debut. Great. And in it, we meet 17-year-old Bucky Yee, one of the most vivid and memorable teen voices in American fiction since J.D. Salinger's Holden Caulfield or Junot Diaz's Oscar Wilde. Growing up in a rural Washington trailer park with a kind of accidental family, Bucky, one of 2 Korean Americans at his school, is wholly dedicated to love of football and his ticket out of the nowhere town, training to be a college running back. Then his life goes sideways. A visiting talent scout overlooks him. The uncle, who is his only father figure, tries to commit suicide and then takes a car dealer hostage, and Bucky ends up in the police station as his uncle's supposed accomplice. While there, authorities discover that Bucky appears not to be an American citizen, so they move to have the local temporary immigration detention center and ultimately deport him to Korea. Bucky has no memory of his birth country, no way to contact his bio father who ghosted him, no money, and not a word of Korean. Yet he must survive in Seoul. Thanks to cute hostile concierge and a motley crew at the local expat bar, Bucky starts to piece together a plan to try to find his bio dad. I guess that's the term we're using instead of biological father. Prove his American identity and make his way home. But while boarding his flight to America, Bucky is arrested yet again. This time accused of running from a mandatory military service required of all Korean men over 18. This character can't catch a break. Boy, oh boy. So he's forced into the Korean army, and the book just goes on from there. Great. Fantastic. So this is a debut novel. What do we know about the author? Joe Milan is second-generation Korean-American and taught in South Korea for 9 years. An assistant professor of creative writing at Waldorf University, he lives in Forest City, Iowa. Fantastic. Okay. Well, I have an advanced copy of this. Now I have the finished copy, and so that will be my inducement to get going on it. Although it's an April book, so we've still got a lot of March books to get going on. Then let's see what this last one is. We've been sailing through this mail haul. We don't have to worry about anything. Tra-la-la. We've got the bean right there. My baby. My little baby. Yes, indeed. Oh, great. Fantastic. All right. This is, I don't have a sheet for this, but I hardly need one. This is the Yale has the Ancient Lives series. New series that they're doing of biographies that are really short. Where they, it's a series. You've seen series like that where it's intention. The brevity of the book is the point of the series, and those series live and die by who you get to write the books. You're not going to get any huge amount of detail in a book that's intentionally kept small. So you need a writer to really do a good job. The first three that they did were terrific. And this is the next one, Ramses the Great, Egypt's King of Kings by Toby Wilkinson, who is a well-known popular writer on ancient Egypt. Fantastic. So this is the next book in that series. This will have to go out to James Holder, I would imagine. Ramses II ruled the Nile Valley and wider Egypt Empire from 1279 to 1213, one of the longest reigns in pharaonic history, 60 years on the throne. He was a cultural innovator, a relentless self-promoter, and an astute diplomat. The peace treaty signed after the Battle of Kadesh, massive battle, was the first in recorded history. He outbuilt every other Egyptian pharaoh, leaving behind the temples of Abu Simbel, the great hypostyle hall at Karnak, the tomb for his wife Nefertari, and his own memorial, the Rams Museum. His reputation eclipsed that of all other pharaohs. He was decried in the Bible as a despot, famed in literature as Ozymandias, and lauded by early antiquarians as the younger Memnon. And his rule coincided with the peak of ancient Egypt's power and prosperity. Fantastic. I have no other biographies of this figure, and I really should. But there you go. So that, baby, what are you doing? What are you doing? Oh. She's always yawning in my videos. It might give me a complex. So that is our mail. We had a bunch of periodicals, and we also had a bunch of finished copies here. We've got The Deep Ocean, Life in the Abyss. We've got Going Zero, the test out of a new surveillance program that has one special applicant. We have a new biography of Ramses the Great, not big, but by an author who's a known quantity to a lot of you. Then we have the All-American Joe Millan's debut novel, but just about the worst-case scenario for his main character, many worst-case scenarios. And finally, Paolo Giovio, who did, what is this called in English? Portraits of Learned Men. This was never meant to happen without illustrations. It would be really nice, in fact, to have this translation, these notes, I'm assuming there'll be notes with this thing, only in a book this size, with not the portraits that Giovio assembled, but because he assiduously assembled portraits, the best ones that he could find, of all the people that he was profiling. Not his portraits, but other portraits. Maybe some of them would coincide. But what I'd really like is a big book that is what he meant his museum on the shore of Lake Como to be, which is that you're seeing the person in addition to reading about them. I don't think this thing has any illustrations at all. I mean, that just wouldn't work with the Itati. No, this doesn't have any illustrations at all. But I'll take what I can get, absolutely. So that was the mail. So we'll wrap this up for now. It's gone on way too long, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.